Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I am going to teach you how to make the Cove Crochet Tote Bag. This bag is available as a free pattern on my website, originallylovely.com, and as a kit. I will have both linked below. This pattern is worked off of a handle that is made almost like a rope. You will create a rectangle by increasing at the corners until you have both the front and the back pieces shaped. To begin, we will use Lion Brand Rewind tape yarn in the color Willow. I am going to be holding this yarn double. The hook that we are using is an 8mm L crochet hook. I will have my favorite ones linked below as well. So to begin, we will create a slip knot and put that on your hook. We will start by chaining 60 stitches. You want to make a nice even chain, not too tight and not too loose. Just nice even 60 stitches, holding both strands of yarn. I will zoom ahead a little bit here, so if you want to pause and catch up until after you have chained the 60 stitches, now would be a good time to do so. Once you get to the end of those 60 stitches, you will make sure that you are working it all flat. So I like to slide my hand across it. I'll make sure that you are not twisting it, and then pull the beginning end towards you, and you're going to put it on the hook as well. Just the top loop of that chain. We're going to join with a slipped stitch. So holding both of your strands of yarn then that are connected to the ball, you will just yarn over and pull through both of those loops. Just like so. That is our first slip stitch. So you can see if you hold it out that our chain is now in a loop with the right side, like the V side facing you if you lay it flat. So we are going to work a slip stitch across this round in each stitch. So all we do is insert our hook into one of the loops, pull up a loop, and then pull that through the first loop to create a slip stitch. We will do this in every stitch around the handle. This works just to slightly thicken this strap. It won't be visible, so don't worry too much if it doesn't look perfectly. We're only working in that top loop, so it won't be, super great looking, but it doesn't matter because this is just the base for the inside of what will be the rope. So I am going to zoom ahead here a little bit more. If you want to pause and catch up, this is a good time to do so. We will just slip stitch around this entire loop that we created with our chain stitches. I'm going to slow it down for a second here just to show you how we're making that inside strap just a little bit thicker, making our chain thicker just so it's a better base to develop our strap so that it's nice and thick and sturdy. So continuing around, just slip stitch into each of those chain stitches. It works quite quickly. Once we get to the end, we will just make sure we go all the way to that final slip stitch. It might look a little bit hidden there, and once we do that, we will just slip stitch with the first slip stitch to join. So we have our final stitch right there. So you can see it's just slightly, you have to make sure you get that one because it's slightly tucked under. Slip stitch that final one, and then slip stitch with the first stitch to join right there. So we have our final stitch. It might be just a little snug, that's okay. Slip stitch through both of those loops. So now you can see we have our loop created, which is a good thick foundation to create the bag handle. So what we will do now is single crochet around this thickened loop. So we'll just go underneath what we just created. So underneath the entire loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then we will pull it through both of those loops. That is our first single crochet around the loop. So again, underneath, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then we'll pull through both of those loops. So you can see it's pretty easy. It kind of helps if you hold the other side with your right hand just to keep it laying flat. You want to make sure that when you're pulling these single crochets up, you're not doing it too tight or too loose. You just want them all to be a nice even tension, because if not, then you might have a few loops that are looser or tighter, but don't worry too much because they do kind of even out as you go along. So you can see on the bag here, we're actually going to be working 80 times, 80 single crochets around this loop. So they're a little bit crunched together just slightly so that you don't see that chain underneath. So again, continuing on, we're just going to single crochet around that foundation loop that we created. So underneath, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both of those loops. So we're going to continue across 80 times. It won't be too snug, surprisingly. It'll just be a perfect amount, even though we're doing 80 for this row, for this round. It just kind of keeps it nice and taut so that the chain isn't showing through at all. So I will zoom ahead a little bit here just because this part is a little bit repetitive. So if you want to pause here and do all of your single crochets and then catch back up to me when you have that completed, this would be a good time to do so. So continue working around all of your single crochets, not too tight, not too loose, just keep them nice and even. I'll show you a little bit what it looks like here. You can see them working around. If one of them doesn't look totally perfect, don't worry about it, because once you single crochet off of those stitches, the tension just evens out, and same with when you use your bag, the tension evens. Just as long as none are too dramatically loose or tight, they're all just pretty similar, you will be good to go. So continuing on, we are single crocheting and getting close to the end here. So make sure you will want to count and make sure you have 80. And if you have a little bit of space left at the end of the row, or you need a little more space to work some more single crochets, you can just kind of adjust them, like slide them over, spread them out a little bit more, tighten them together, and just go around and make sure that it's nice and evenly spaced and just evenly tensioned. You can do this a little bit, but again, don't over stress on it, because once you go around and start crocheting off of this handle, it will kind of even out. So I have it all counted, and I'm going to do a slip stitch to join once more with that first stitch. So I'm just going into both those loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that through the first loop to join. It's pretty easy, and you can kind of just scoot those over and cover up that beginning slip knot. Chain one just to begin the next row, and the chain will not count as the first stitch, so we will be working into the second chain from the hook, and we will be working half double crochets. So yarn over, pull up a loop in that second chain from your hook, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to create your first half double crochet. You can see it there. Yarn over, and then we will work a half double crochet in the next stitch as well. We will work 13 half double crochet stitches until we form our first corner. So just work your next half double crochet hook in both of the loops on the single crochets worked around the loop. So we're just working the bag off of that handle. It's really nice because it's just in one piece then, and the handle is super sturdy because it's attached to the bag. So this entire bag is mostly, aside from chain stitches, worked in half double crochet, which is pretty easy, and it does go quite fast. So just be sure that you are counting and double checking that you have 13 of these first half double crochet stitches before our corner. So We will continue on into both loops, half double crochet. Make sure that you have 13, and I will work one more, and we will now shape our corner. So just be sure you count, because it is important, like I said, off the first row. And you can see it works nicely. It makes the handle look pretty good. So that corner, we will work a half double crochet, chain 2, and half double crochet all into the same stitch. So that's 2 half double crochets into that stitch, separated by the chain 2. And that is where we will increase on the next rows, is in that chain 2 space. So now we will continue across to the next corner. We will work 13 more half double crochet stitches and then shape the next corner. So it will almost look like there's 14 half double crochets after the chain 2, because the corner is a half double crochet as well. So continue to the next corner. This bag will work pretty quickly, just because on the next rows you won't actually have to really count your stitches. You will just have to work up until that corner chain 2 space. So we're getting close to those 13. Just again, make sure you count and verify. And then you can see we're working the bottom piece of that rectangle. So just verify, count 13 from that corner, so 14 half double crochets. And now in that next space, we'll work a half double crochet, chain 2, and half double crochet all into the same space. And you can see that next corner is shaped. So the handle is already kind of starting to bend into the shape of the bag. The corners really do make a very defined corner quickly. So then we'll work 13 more half double crochets to complete this row. You won't have to count on the next rounds, like I said, or the next rows, because you'll just work up until the corner spaces and then increase in each of those chain 2s. You just have to make sure that you get the final half double crochet, which I will show you on the next rounds how it kind of hides a little bit. So 13 half double crochets just to complete this round, and then we will chain 1 and turn. And again, that chain 1 does not count as the first stitch. So coming up to the end there, you can see that it is starting to form. So count again, make sure you have 13, and then chain 1 and turn your work. So you can see how it will start to form. You can see each edge, and then that corner chain 2 will be the increase area, and we'll create those eyelets that go along the bottom in a diagonal shape. So in the second chain from the hook, which is your first half double crochet stitch, you will half double crochet into both loops, half double crochet across until that first corner. And like I said before, you just want to make sure you get that final half double crochet stitch before the chain 2s, so that you are actually increasing each row, or otherwise your bag won't have the shape of the rectangle, because you won't be increasing at all. But it's easy enough. I will show you that. Final one always hides a little bit in near the chains. So continue across, half double crochet in each of those stitches. Half double crochet has always been one of my favorite stitches, just because I like how it's a good mix of dense. It works quickly, but it's also dense. So it's perfect for this bag and this yarn, really. So we're getting close to the corner there, and you can see we have one more half double crochet. So if you miss it, it's because it does kind of look like a chain, because there's not really like a stitch under it as much, but you just have to make sure you get it, and then you can count the chain twos. So the chain twos are always a little smaller than the top of a stitch, so that's also one way you can keep it in mind. So in that chain two space, we'll half double crochet, chain two, half double crochet, all into the chain two space. So you can see how it opens up that chain two space and makes an eyelet. And then we'll half double crochet into the next stitch and half double crochet across into the next corner. I'm going to speed ahead just a little bit here because it does get a little repetitive, you know, it's just half double crochets. So if you want to pause here and then work until the next corner and catch back up, you can do that here. I'm getting close to that corner now, just finishing up all of those stitches along this bottom part of the row. And again, I'll show you this final stitch. It is just kind of hidden right by that chain there, so just make sure you get it. And then the chain two, they're always like a little bit smaller. You can see them after the stitch. So then you half double crochet, chain two, and half double crochet into that chain two space. So there's your increase. And then we have our next half double crochet right there, right after the eyelet, and I'll zoom ahead a little bit again to complete this row. So just half double crochet across in every stitch, and each row after this will look super similar. You'll just work until the end of this row. So coming across now, we're at the end, and don't forget that final stitch. You have to make sure you get it there so that the top of your bag is nice and smooth. And then finish up that row, and we'll chain one and turn. So that row that we just worked, if you're following along with the written pattern, that row is number 4. So if you can see, it says repeat row 4 12 more times, and then you can count out that you'll have 14 eyelets from the increases. So right now we have 2 eyelets, and we will have 14 when we're completed. So turn, and then we'll work one more row just like we just worked the final row. We'll actually work 12 more rows just like that, but one more on the video that I'll show you. So I'll zoom ahead a little bit here, half double crochet until the corner, and don't forget that final half double crochet into that stitch, and then in our chain 2 space in the corner we will half double crochet, chain 2, and half double crochet again. So we have another increase, and that's our 3rd eyelet, and remember we're doing 14 eyelets total, so that's our 3rd. And we'll continue across. I'll zoom forward a little bit again here too, just to show you this row once more. So into that final stitch, half double crochet, and then into that chain 2 corner space we'll half double crochet, chain 2, and half double crochet once more to increase, and then half double crochet into that first stitch and continue across to the end of this row. And you can really see the bag starting to form now, how the edges are starting to look more rectangle. You can really see the corners and the handle like you could in the pictures at the beginning. So if I lay it out flat here, you can really start to see what it's going to look like. So now we're going to repeat that row that we just worked 11 more times at this point, so 14 eyelets total. And I will catch you back here. You will do this twice, so you will have the front of the bag and the back of the bag. So now I have completed those rows all twice, and I have the 2 sides. I have the front and the back of the bag pieces. So I'm laying them flat and kind of showing you how they will look, but before we assemble, we actually need to create the base. So taking our 2 strands of yarn once again, hold them together because we will work it double. And we're going to create a slip knot once more using our same crochet hook. We are going to chain 32 stitches. So just chain as you did at the beginning, not too tight, not too loose. And I'm going to zoom ahead a little bit here. Just chain 32 stitches. You can pause if you would like and meet back up when you complete your 32 chain. So we're doing 32 chain stitches. Our row is actually going to be 31 stitches across. So that will give us just the exact measurement we need for the bag. So verify you have 32, and then we're actually going to be turning it over and working into that loop behind the chain. So if you look, you have your V, and then if you turn it over, there's that loop behind the chain stitch. We're going to work a half double crochet into that stitch. And I noticed as I watched this back that I work a half double crochet slip stitch into these first 2 stitches. Don't do that. Work a full half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then yarn over again and pull through all 3 of those. I must have been too focused on showing you the back loop of that chain, which you can see right there. And I start to do it right on this stitch. So just again, half double crochets along this row. I'm surprised I never noticed that, but it is okay. So half double crochet across this row into that loop behind the chain stitch. So you have your V, and then if you turn it over, you can see that 3rd loop. It's always a little bit tight when you insert your hook, but this doesn't really make it tight when you have it worked up at the end. It's just a little bit more of an awkward placement for your hook, which is really no big deal. So I will show you here kind of what it looks like. The reason we're doing that is because it gives you a nice chain look on the bottom as well, so that it matches the top, and that will just be easier for us to seam the bag together, and there won't be a spot where it looks any weaker because you were only going through 1 loop instead of 2. So now you can see I have my first row completed, and you will repeat this 11 times. So you will have 12 rows total. So chain 1, turn, and half double crochet into that 2nd chain. So once again, that turning chain does not count as your first stitch. Half double crochet across, working into each of these loops, both loops, in each stitch, all the way across, and then you will work that until you have completed 12 rows total. So I'm going to jump ahead. So I've completed that piece and I set it aside. I didn't pull through or cut the final piece of yarn because I'm going to use that to weave in my end. So I'm showing you now how the bag will look. You can kind of see that the front and the back will line up, and you will have your handles next to each other, and the bottom is going to kind of pop forward. You're going to start weaving in 6 stitches away from either end, and those are going to fold in around that bottom base piece, and then up the sides of each of the main pieces will be seamed, and this will kind of create like a 3-dimensional bag that can stand up on its own. So with our bottom rectangle piece, we will begin. I'm just going to make sure that these are situated with the wrong sides facing. So that means there is like a front and a back to these main bag pieces. If you look, there's these purl bumps, I call them, on the inside of the chain. So just put those bumps on the inside, so wrong sides facing, and work that final, pull it through the final stitch, and cut the yarn pretty long so that you can weave in with this strand. So I'm going to thread those 2 strands onto a tapestry needle, and we will use that to seam the bottom of the bag. We're going to work around the bottom of the bag first and then up each side after we have completed that. So you want to find the place that is 6 stitches away from the corner, so that first chain of the chain 2 corner space counts as a stitch, and we'll start into that 6th chain at the bottom. So the first one is a corner chain, and then that 6th stitch, and we will insert our needle through both of those loops just like so. And we will be working kind of like a modified mattress stitch for this edge because we're working from like stitches onto the edge of rows. So then we'll go into our first row front to back, and you just don't want to go through like a too loose of a spot on the row. You kind of want to go through a spot where it's a little bit snug, just so that there's no like hole or gapping there when the bag is full and it's like a little bit stretched. And you do want to pull that just a little bit tight, but very gentle, because you can tear this yarn if you're too aggressive with it. So then into the next chain on the bottom there, that next stitch, you'll go through both loops, and then the next row on the base of the bag. So we're doing 1 stitch per 1 row. So this base that we made is 12 rows. So we're doing 6 stitches from the edge of one side of the bag to the other side. So again, just be really kind of careful when you pull through. Watching this back, it does look like was pulling it through kind of hard, so just don't do that because it could break. So then pull through the next stitch on the bag, both loops, and then onto the next row. So 1 stitch per each row, continuing across just like that. And it doesn't really matter too much where you go into that row. You just want to make sure that it's a nice spot that you can go into the same spot each time, and then that it's not a super loose spot, because like I said, if the bag is full, you don't want there to be a hole there when it's like pulled through. So pull that through gently, and 1 stitch per 1 row. We'll continue across this way. We just have a few left. So right through there, through that like tighter spot of that row, pull that taut, and then another stitch. We're getting close to the end here, just 1 stitch per row. That's the only part that's really important. And then once we're doing a stitch to a stitch, it's way easier because you don't really have to count as much. It's more obvious. So front to the back into that next row. You can kind of see how it's going to look on the edge here. Pull it through, and then we're getting close to the end into both loops of that next stitch. This will just give it plenty of structure and make it nice and secure. So then into the next row, just to finish this piece here. And then I'll show you how we begin and seam with the back bag piece next. So now slightly kind of turning it up, you can see we have 6 rows left to work, and those are going to be taken by the 6 stitches on the next edge of the bag. So if we just turn that up, that's how we're going to join. So from front to back once more, we're going to work into the bottom part. So the second chain of that chain 2 space is the first stitch. So front to back with the right side facing you. So it will be like if that corner piece is turned up, and pull through, and then into the next row on the bottom piece. So like the 7th row from where we've started working. This is really the hardest part of the seaming, and then after that it goes pretty quickly and easily, but just don't pull it too tight and continue across just nice and slowly, watching where you go, and you should be fine. So you can see that next stitch right there, front to back through the stitch, and then into the next row right there, into a tighter place on that row, not like a huge hole, and then the next stitch on the bag piece, continuing across. And then after this, we will just continue along on the edge of the bag, the bottom of the bag, and that will give it that 3D popped up look that I showed you in the previous clip, how the edges kind of like turn in and like fold over. And this is nice because it will just make it kind of 3D. So I actually pulled it through the wrong place here, so just make sure that you're making it so it goes like each one is around, like you're not making any knots in the pieces that you pull through. So the next stitch right there, pull through. I really like this technique of the bottom piece of the bag because it just adds a little depth so the bag can hold plenty of stuff, and it kind of makes it so that it can like close at the top a little bit and sit up on its own. It kind of pops it open as well so that it's just like more three-dimensional, just a lot better shape to it. So we're getting close to the end here, into that next stitch, and then into that row. So we're just about to the corner. We have that final row. Pull that through. Again, just be gentle. It looks like I was not so gentle every time that I pulled it through. And then into the next stitch, both loops, front to back, and then you can see now we'll start working along those stitches. So this is where it gets way easier. So just that first stitch, it's a little tight just because it was like our corner with that slip knot through right there. And then we will turn around. So you can see there where we will seam up the two edges together after we've completed it. So turn it around. Now that we have the bag completed, the corner, we will work along one stitch. It's easy this way because it's one stitch either way. So you just go through the chain through both loops, front to back, and then you can see here both loops, front to back on like that first full stitch, because the last one was kind of like that chain corner stitch. There was also just that row, so pull through just like that, and then on the next one go through both of those stitches, and we will continue across the bottom this way, and then you will repeat. Once you get to the other edge, you will repeat those final 6 stitches along the 6 rows on the edge of this bottom base of the bag, and then the 6 stitches along of the next piece of the bag onto the final 6 rows of the bottom piece. And it's just like one big loop. And if you do, just do 1 stitch per stitch together or 1 stitch per row, you should have the exact perfect amount. So you can see this is quite a bit easier. I'll zoom forward a bit here just to show you a couple more. You can see it's starting to shape up. It looks really nice and even. Now I have completed the base. I went all the way around just as I explained, you can see, and we just have to finish up by working the sides. So we're just going to go right up either side. You can see how the base is nice and 3-dimensional. It'll pop up when it stands. So I'm just going to work up that edge. It's just 1 stitch per stitch again in a mattress stitch type seam. So we can see our stitches there, just those little V's, and on that other side as well, nice and easy. So just in through that first one. Make sure that you don't split any of the strands of yarn like I did there. You just go through both of the strands, front to back, pull through. Both of the strands on the other side, front to back, pull through all the way up, and continue. So the next stitch there, pull through front to back, both loops, and the other side again, both loops. Nice and easy, just as we did working the 2 stitches together on the bottom length piece of the bag. So we will work that all the way up, and then you will just repeat this on the other side, and you'll have to weave in all of your ends, which there really isn't that many, luckily. Just weave those in securely. If you do tie any knots, just make sure that they're facing the back. I normally don't tie in any knots, but with this yarn, I don't think it really matters. Seam all the way up, repeat on the other side, and then weave in your ends, like I said, and your bag will be completed. So this is what it'll look like when it's all done. Since we only chained 1, that top edge looks nice and smooth. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think if you make this bag. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy!